Welcome to another episode of Risk. This is another 6-player fixed card game which is being played with public randoms. Settings: balanced blitz dice rolls, 60 seconds per turn, no alliances. And judging by my opponent's stats, I see that almost all of them are probably low ranked and don't have that much of experience. So with the exception of the green player who has over 800 games played, and who wins every third game he plays, so he should be my toughest opponent. Then the pink player wins every third game he plays also, but he only played 6 online games so far, so it's kinda hard to judge by that, and we will have to identify how decent he is from his gameplay. Then the blue player wins every 5th game he plays, which is not bad at all, especially considering he hasn't played that many of the games yet. And then finally we have the orange player who wins every 9th game he plays, and the yellow player who hasn't won any game yet, but he only played 2 online games so far. So judging by the stats, the orange and yellow players are the ones who I should be the most careful about and try not to annoy too much or get in their way, because they are the ones who are most likely to throw the game. However, looking to the stats, it's just one of the parts which could help you identify on how good your opponents are, but not necessarily, as your opponent could be good at one settings but quite bad on the other ones, and also the fewer player games you play, the greater win-loss ratio you're supposed to have, so a player who mostly plays 1v1 games will have a better winning ratio than the one who mostly plays 6-player games, for example. And when a lot of games played are supposed to make you a greater player with much more experience, it won't always be this way. There could be a player with thousands of games played who is stuck at a beginner rank, while there could be a grandmaster having only like 100 of games played. So the win-loss ratio in total games played might not necessarily represent on how good a player actually is, especially when there are a bunch of different settings, maps and game modes, and then also one players prefer to play with higher rank players while the other ones with lower rank players. And then also players create new accounts, so it's possible that someone could have joined your game on either new or alternative account. So never underrate a player who only has a few games played but a good win-loss ratio. Like for example, the pink player won twice from the 6 games he played, and then also uses the South American turtle strategy, putting his troops to Peru while not guarding his borders to not irritate his opponents. And that is extremely unusual for a new player to do so I could predict that it could be a new account of someone else, or that he could have watched some Risk videos online. But also it's possible that it was just random for him to leave his troops on Peru instead of on a border and make it look like that he is about to use the South American turtle strategy. And then also he could have just seen another player doing that in one of his previous games, and as a new player you try to learn from more experienced players than you. But anyways, as you can see, the pink player in his second turn has started to properly guard his borders instead of putting them inside. So that's really possible that it was just random for him to leave his troops in Peru before. All in all, we are going to see how decent he is by the way he plays. It doesn't really matter if a player looks like an alternative account or not, and it doesn't that much matter how good or bad are his stats. You're mostly going to identify how good your opponent is by his gameplay. I would say that the gameplays by the way your opponents make your moves give you much more value on predicting how good your opponent is than looking to his stats. But of course stats could be very helpful also, especially in the beginning of the game, as like for example low-ranked players tend to waste a lot of troops and fight for the continents, really ruining the game for both of you. So if you have a few good different options where to put your troops, then it could help you decide which of the options to choose. And of course if you are relatively new, not that much experienced player yourself, then it could be hard to predict how good your opponent is judging by his gameplay, but with the time you should learn and get better at that. What I see is that the pink player has randomly skipped his card for another time while he could have attacked a territory of 1 troop, which would have led him of eventually trading in a set for 1 more troops. So as of now the pink player looks more like a new low-ranked player rather than an alternative account. And when it comes to yellow, I would say that he is a new player for sure. He crushed 6 troops of the green player in the territory of the Middle East, wasting troops, while the green player most likely wanted to just move his troops closer to Australia rather than to look forward to attack in Africa. Then also the yellow player crushed a lot of troops in Africa, taking not the most favorable blitz rolls and not having guarantee that he would actually hold it. But luckily for him these blitz rolls were very good, as otherwise he might have been already taken out. But even right now he is only at 14 troops and 3 cards, which is still a very big risk of getting taken out if he doesn't trade in a set. Then the orange player looks a lot like a low-rank player also, with him splitting his troops to multiple smaller armies and trying to capture North America when he wouldn't able to properly hold it with other players not wanting it. And then when it comes to the blue and green players, they seem to not waste their troops for a no good reason, just putting them to big armies. And this is what good players quite usually do when waiting for the opportunities. Though it could be possible that the blue player is waiting to trade in a set to take Australia from green, which probably wouldn't be the best decision because then I would probably try taking Australia from him. So I'm not sure what the blue player's plans are. So I'm just waiting to see if he decides to do something stupid after trading in a set. The blue player currently looks like the most threatening player for me, with him staying close to Europe. I would kinda like to take the yellow player out, but it would kinda disfavor me, as then I could be taken out next, and not necessarily by blue. Then the green and pink players would look intimidating also. And with the pink player putting his troops on Brazil, I wouldn't really like to go for Africa. And then with the blue player possibly wanting to go after Australia or even completely take the green player out, I wouldn't like to move out from Europe, because then the blue player could change his mind to go for Europe instead. But as you can see, he only had 4 troops set, and whether he actually wanted to go for Australia or not, it doesn't really matter anymore, because it seems he won't go for it anymore. I guess he was scared of getting taken out with his cards. So this is why he traded in a set, even though it was the worst one, or maybe all of his cards were soldiers, so no matter what card he would have received next he would have still gotten 4 troops, who knows. But in any case, I don't really like the fact that he moved into Europe, with me trading in a set and other players moving their troops out from it, so I wouldn't waste any troops. I was planning to capture Europe and use the European turtle strategy, to not guard any borders, just putting one big army inside of Europe so my opponents wouldn't be bothered by me, and then waiting till some of the opponents destroy each other. As of now it seems to be a huge tension between the pink and yellow players. They build their huge armies next to each other, and then the yellow player was invaded by pink. So with the tension growing bigger and bigger, I think one of them will finally attack another one's biggest army, probably making both of them to be eliminated from the game. And the good news of it is then I might be able to get a continent for myself, either South America, Africa or Europe, but who knows. The blue player seems to be an enemy for me, which wants to prevent me from capturing Europe, but maybe he just wants to capture it for himself and that's it. Maybe it would be fine for him of me getting any other continent if such an opportunity comes. It seems that the green player is targeting yellow and I'm not really sure if I like it. I mean, on one hand it's of course very good when players are doing something to not make the game stalemate, even if it's a small thing, but on the other hand the green player by invading yellow might distract him from the pink player. The pink and yellow players are building big armies next to each other, and there might be just a matter of time when finally of them cracks and takes opponent's biggest army down, pretty much ruining the game for both of them. But if the green player keeps invading yellow, then the yellow player could stop building a huge army on the pink player's border and start focusing on defending against green instead. But in such case a good effect would be if the pink player stopped focusing on yellow also and invaded the orange player who has the biggest continent, as if nobody invades him, then he will have quite much bigger influence of the game than anyone else, and then it will be up to him which players to target or even eliminate, which could be any of us. But either way I think he couldn't dominate the game easily, so then it would be more about which players he decides to target. And then thinking a little bit more, it might be actually good for the green player to keep invading yellow, as then with the yellow player not receiving continental bonuses and ending up weaker than pink, pink might be encouraged to take yellow's army down and finish him off. And the sooner the yellow player gets eliminated, the faster players might be able to start focusing on orange, as then I think he would be seen as the biggest threat. Or we could say the sooner the pink player gets eliminated, but in this case the yellow player is the one who is being targeted. So what the green player being stronger could have potentially done, is capturing all the African territories of yellow except the North African one which the yellow player puts his biggest army to. As then the pink player seeing the yellow player having one territory left, might be very encouraged to just take the yellow player out. But also the green player shouldn't leave Australia too poorly guarded because then someone could try taking it from him, for example the blue player. Of course it would be dumb, but I mean you can never know what could happen playing with low-ranked players. Sometimes they could literally destroy themselves for a continent. What I noticed is that the pink player really likes that the yellow player is being invaded by green, besides the yellow player obviously being an enemy for pink who is being invaded by another player which should make the pink player very happy about. Also the pink player said well played to the green player. So the pink and green players, or at least the pink player should feel very good about the green player the diplomacy-wise. And because of that it would be bad for the third player to end up in a three-player situation with both of them, as their being in good terms quite more likely would be going after that third player, rather than suddenly deciding to be enemies with each other or trying to bring that third player to their side, so he would be helping to attack another one. So if possible, then I think I will try to influence the game that one of them would get eliminated assuming it would be wise to do so. As, of course if someone's holding a big continent, then of course I would rather have both of them alive, so they could attack that player, so I wouldn't be forced to do the dirty work myself. But let's say if I end up in a 4-player situation with both of them, and I have a good opportunity to eliminate one of the players of my choice, then I would eliminate one of them rather than another player, whichever one it would be. Well, to be honest I'm not that much sure how I feel about the blue player. He seems to be intimidating towards me by building his army next to me and preventing me from capturing Europe, and also he is currently being very passive like me. So we're kinda using the same strategy. And also I don't feel good vibes from the players who build their big armies next to me. Sometimes they just suddenly decide to suicide on you at the same time ruining the game for themselves also. Sometimes a player just doesn't really care about the game and his main goal is just to eliminate you, even if you haven't done anything to him. Well, at least I had some this kind of players, and looking to their stats they looked very decent. So I'm not sure if it's the same case with the blue player, but I hope it's not. As it seems he tries to keep a distance, and by splitting these smaller armies in the territories of Europe, I think he friendly tries to make me move out from Europe. But I had some players who were stalking me building their armies next to me and then suiciding. I mean sometimes low-ranked players will suicide on you because you build a big army in the continent they're going for. But in the cases I'm talking about, it wasn't such a case. In one of the games I captured Australia, and a Grandmaster ranked player was building a big army on Siam wanting to make me trapped while not even having any continent himself. And then after multiple turns what he did is suicided on me sending a bunch of laughing emojis. And then in another case I had Australia also, and a player who had decent stats was going for Europe. Then I think he got invaded, but instead of retaliating to that player, he decided to bring his biggest army next to me. And I mean if you're strong enough then sometimes it could be a good idea to eliminate one of the weaker players. And it could be especially good to become the Australian turtle yourself, but in that case that player was even weaker than me, so he totally couldn't afford taking me out, or even have enough troops to crush my army. But what he did after some turns is crushed his army into me. After moving out from Europe, even though being weaker than me he was building his biggest army next to me, so he was kinda provocating me to take him out. But I stayed calm and ignored him, as if I correctly remember it was a 6-player situation, and if I eliminated him, then very likely I would have been eliminated next, so I didn't want to risk it. he was still kept building his army next to me until eventually he crushed it into me. He had decent stats like maybe winning every third of his games, and then also he hasn't any country flag assigned, so it could have been very likely to be an alternative account of someone else. But anyways, let's move on from that and get back to talking about the current game. What I think has happened with the orange player suiciding on pink, is that the orange player got mad on the pink player invading him. And I mean that's something you could expect from low-ranked players, so this is why you should try being very careful playing with them and try to avoid annoying them or even attacking them if possible, as they are very likely to throw the game. The orange player had relatively bad stats, winning only every 9th game he played, and saying only every 9th game might not sound as bad, but looking to the numbers themselves, he only won 5 online games out of 45 games he played. So in the beginning of the game I predicted it right that the players should be very careful about him. But anyways, as you can see, it's very good for me that the orange player has self-destroyed himself, because one thing, there is one opponent fewer in the game, and another thing, now I finally get to hold a continent by myself also, and most importantly not a small one but a big one. Which as you can see is North America, which is going to give me 5 extra troops. And it's extremely good when you only need to guard 3 borders. But as you can see in this case I don't guard any single one of them anyways. I'm using the Northwest Territory North American Turtle strategy, the strategy in which you build a big army on the territory of Northwest Territory and basically not guarding any of your borders at all, or just a few cosmetical troops and that's it. So your opponents wouldn't be intimidated by you. You don't put pressure by not putting troops on your opponent's borders, so they can feel good about you. They let you hold the continent while focusing on the players who put the pressure on them. But while your opponents are not intimidated by you, at the same time they're afraid of messing up with you also, as if they invade you, then they know that your biggest army could be used on you, so they don't want to risk it. So what you just basically do is just hoard your troops and waiting till your opponents destroy each other. But I mean, even if they invade you, then you will only lose 1 or a few troops depending on how many you put on your unguarded invaded border, so that's basically nothing. You will still be able to put your troops to one big army waiting till your opponents destroy each other, so just without getting 5 continental troops. In this case, using the North American Turtle strategy, I decided to put my troops to just one big army instead of 2 or even 3 of them. You want to put your counterattack army 1 territory back behind your border. And the Northwest Territory is good to that it's behind both of the upper North American borders, so you can just put your troops to one big counterattack army in Northwest Territory, instead of like having 2 counterattack armies in the territories of Alberta and Quebec for example. And that's amazingly good. But of course there is still an issue being left when it comes to counterattacking the South American player, as while the army on Northwest Territory protects both of the upper borders, it doesn't protect the lower North American border. So if you don't trust the South American player, then I recommend you to build an additional army to either Western United States, or Eastern United States territory, so the South American player would be discouraged from invading you too. But when I captured North America, I decided not to build an additional army against the South American pink player, because I knew that the pink player is an enemy with the yellow player, and then obviously the pink player should have hated the orange player because of him suiciding on him, so I assumed he would have really liked my decision to take the orange player out and appreciated me because of that. And then finally the pink player was very weak, so that was another reason for him not to try messing up with me with the yellow player building a big army next to him, as then he would have had 2 enemies at once. Well, I mean, he made himself to have 2 enemies at once while deciding to invade the orange player, but I mean the yellow player was getting invaded by green, so he might have felt very comfortable on invading orange back then, especially when he was stronger than orange. But oh wow, I'm not sure why the pink player has suddenly decided to poke the bear. That was unexpected. Because I could literally take him out and then the game would be over to him. And I could definitely afford that, so I just wouldn't be the strongest player anymore. and then there could be a risk the blue player could try getting rid of me as the fourth opponent who is not really needed for the balance of the game to be sustained. But yeah, I mean it's not very wise decision for the pink player to start messing up with me when I became so much stronger than him. And especially when I tried to stay being in good terms with him. One thing, I wasn't building an army next to his border, or even a counterattack army one territory behind the border. And another thing, I let him keep having the Asian territories so he would still be able to continue getting cards. I could have easily wiped his one-troop territories out and block him in South America by putting a lot of troops next to his border. But I didn't want to. North America was just captured by me and I wasn't as strong, so if I had put a lot of pressure on pink, then I couldn't have done much in case I would have gotten invaded either by blue or green. I wouldn't have been able to afford holding North America with one of these players being my enemies, with additionally the pink player being my enemy as well. So my plan was to build one counterattack army which could counterattack either blue or green, as whichever player of these two invaded me, I would have put that army on that border. But now I have enough troops to have two different armies, one which protects from pink, and another one which would protect from either blue or green. Well, the blue player is as strong as me, so he could afford crushing one of my armies, and also he has access to both of my upper borders. But when it comes to green, if he invaded me attacking to Alaska, then I could just put my Northwest Territory army on the territory of Alaska to protect against him. And he couldn't really afford crushing that army, as very likely he could get taken out, ending up with barely any troops. That's just too bad the pink player had a set at 3 cards. I was considering taking him out, but obviously now I won't. And I mean, I'm not sure if I had actually taken him out, but I was considering it. Also, that's too bad that the yellow player didn't want to take the pink player out after trading in a set. I thought he would definitely take him out getting an opportunity, but the yellow player decided to use the troops he got to start guarding against the green player instead. But I mean, that was a good decision for the yellow player to not take the pink player out, as then most likely the yellow player would have been eliminated next. So the yellow player played well. So it's just kinda frustrating for me that the pink player stays in the game and we are still in a 5-player situation, while we could have been in a 4-player one, or even a 3-player one. But obviously it would have been bad for the yellow player, he would have been eliminated next. So I cannot complain. Or unless if I had taken the pink player by myself, then I'm not sure how the game would have gone. I assume my opponents wouldn't have let me hold both of the Americas, so then I would have gotten invaded into them, and what I would have tried to do is using the South American turtle strategy. But I mean, then I would have had no idea who would have wanted to attack who, and also I wouldn't have been guaranteed that the yellow player would have let me hold South America, but I would have tried neither to annoy nor pressure him. But if he still invaded me without me even guarding, then I would have let him take over South America, keeping my biggest army inside North America being without a continent, and waiting till the yellow and blue players would have started to fight each other, as I assume then that would have been the most likable scenario. Anyway, as you saw, I was invaded by blue, but it's just a logic of low-ranked players. When they set up their troops in the way that they couldn't attack a territory with their troops, or forget to add some troops to another territory, then they will just invade a player into his continent. So I don't think the blue player wanted to start a conflict with me, but it's just strange how he for another time didn't add any troops to Asia to attack an Asian territory made of one and ended up attacking another player into a continent again. Well, it will actually be very good if a conflict starts with him and the yellow player. The blue player is the strongest opponent of mine who pretty much has the same amount of troops as me, but if the yellow player crushes some of his troops into him, then I will be the strongest player for sure, and that should really help me out to have the highest chances to get to a 3-player situation. I don't really like that the blue player has strengthened my border against me. I put a lot of troops to Greenland so the blue player wouldn't consider invading me anymore, but I think it kinda made him to be intimidated by me by a little bit. That's possible that he could think that I want to invade him into Europe, but I don't want to, and at the same time I don't want to risk it of him suddenly crushing my whole army. So what I decided to do is to put my Greenland army 1 territory back, leaving only 9 troops on the border, so he wouldn't be intimidated by me anymore, and then would rather attack 1 troop territory of Yellow in case Yellow doesn't guard one of his borders or so. But as you can see, even a better thing has happened. The Yellow player has had enough of it, and getting invaded for a second time, decided to retaliate and invade the Blue player by himself also. And that is actually very good for me, especially if the Blue player decides to invade the Yellow player once again, and that would lead both of them having a big conflict, as I will just simply hoard my troops and be the strongest player. I will just enjoy being in the advantage, and then after the Yellow and Blue players end up highly destroying each other, hopefully I will have the same number of troops as all of my opponents combined, though it's unlikely because there are even 4 opponents left. But at the very least I think I will have the opportunity to decide which player I want to eliminate to get to the 3-player situation, but I could not necessarily do that. I could just continue using the North American turtle strategy and waiting till another conflict happens after either the Blue or Yellow player gets eliminated. And what information I gathered the diplomacy-wise is that the Yellow player is basically enemies with everyone, the Pink player is building a big army next to his border, the Green player was invading him before and the Blue player is invading him now. So actually the Yellow player would be the best option for me to end up being in a 3-player situation, as he has had a conflict with all of the 3 opponents, so it would favor me the diplomacy-wise. Then I predict that the Pink and Green players like each other, so it would be good for me that one of them would get eliminated. The Green player seems to be the most decent player here, so preferably him, and then also the Pink player feels more or less good about me as he doesn't have any troops next to my border while I and the Green player are attacking each other's Asian territories back and forth. Then the Blue player seems to have neutral relationships with the Pink and Green players, while still strongly guarding against me, so I kinda wouldn't like to end up in a 3-player situation with him except if another opponent is Yellow. But maybe the Blue player feels neutral about me also. But at the end I think it would be the most ideally for me to end up in a 3-player situation with the Yellow and Pink players. They seem to be the least irritated by me, but to end up with the Yellow player plus any other opponent should turn out very good also. So just the problem is that the Blue player is attacking him and with other players probably having a bad attitude towards him also, and then finally with the Yellow player being the weakest player, I think unfortunately the Yellow player will be the player who gets eliminated next, ending up in the 5th place. I think the game is pretty much over for the Yellow player, so just hopefully he doesn't decide to suicide on me randomly. He fortified his biggest army to the territory of Ural and I'm not sure what is he going to do with it. The Pink player has left South America completely unguarded and not having any troops in it, so I could really easily take it from him. But the reason why I don't want to is because then I'm pretty sure either the Green or Blue player would invade me into North America, so at the end I would end up switching North America to South America, which doesn't seem to be as a great deal. And then the Pink player shows a lot of trust in me by leaving South America with no troops, so I wouldn't like to turn him into an enemy while I don't trust the Blue and Green players that much. I think if the Yellow player gets taken out by Blue, then he should end up being more or less as strong or as weak as Pink, and with the Pink and Blue players having the same value continents they would be balancing each other, so then I think it would be the most ideally for me to eliminate the Green player from the game, becoming the Australian turtle player myself and waiting till there a conflict between the Pink and Blue players starts going, so then when they would be destroying each other, I would stay out of conflict and finally when I would have more troops than both of them combined I would win the game. It's so fortunate that the Yellow player decided to invade the Blue player, wasting a lot of troops and leaving his army in Europe. That should have made him guaranteed to be eliminated next almost 100%. I think the Blue player will combine 2 of his armies into one and take him out from the game, or if not, then I could easily afford taking the Yellow player out by myself. so I'm just not sure if I want to, as I'm the only player the yellow player hadn't had any conflicts with, so the diplomacy-wise it would be very good to keep him in the game for me for sure. And alright, the yellow player has just been eliminated by green, which I don't think was a good decision made by him, because it will be even easier for me to eliminate him from the game. I won't have to waste as many troops, and now I'm completely sure that I can eliminate the green player safely. Though I could just still continue turtling and do nothing, just waiting till another conflict happens between two of the players, preferably between the blue and pink players, so then I would win the game easily. But that's also possible that with me being the strongest player my opponents could decide to start invading me. Then another option is that all of us turtle and then somebody finally disconnects, so then I would really have big chances to win. But I don't know, the game is getting kinda boring and I want to make some moves as well. I don't want to continue doing nothing all the time. So like I said, I see that the blue and pink players would be balancing each other out, so what I want to do is to eliminate the green player from the game. I mean, it kinda feels bad because he eliminated the yellow player from the game, so the game would be less stalemated while I, being the strongest player, just continued turtling in North America doing nothing. But no matter how sad it is, it's just the best for me to eliminate the green player from the game. Usually if you have Australia, two other low-ranked opponents just end up destroying each other, having big continents, so I think it would go this way with the blue and pink players this way also. Then if I eliminate either blue or pink, then the green player would probably be in the best position, as I assume another opponent would eventually go after me, or I would have to go after that opponent myself, and with that opponent not knowing much about the balance of the game, he could end up over-attacking me, so then the green player would win the game. But like I said, it would feel kinda bad to take the green player out, but I would have still taken him out. But then the blue player decided to mess up with me by invading me into North America. And that was so dumb for him because he made me change my mind in the last minute. He could have stayed in the game instead of green and only invaded me then. But since he invaded me, he got taken out next. I was the strongest player and having quite more troops than anybody else. It was up to me which player I want to eliminate. I mean, I will probably regret eliminating the blue player instead of green later. But I mean, it might be fun to play differently this time. Usually I would take the Australian player out, becoming the Australian turtle player myself, and waiting till my two lower ranked opponents would over-destroy each other, so I would get an easy win. So now I will see if I'm able to come up with something good when being another big continent player, with a low-ranked player being a big continent player also, and the third player, who is unfortunate decent, being the Australian turtle player. And I mean, I'm already regretting, the pink player invaded me into Europe and the green player took a bunch of mine territories. It wouldn't be as bad if only one of them showed the aggression towards me, but now it should be tough with both of them wanting to attack me. So what I will try to do is try to still sustain holding North America, and then it would be good to capture South America, but then I'm pretty sure the pink player would crush my guarding army, so I would like to become quite a bit stronger than pink, and then capture South America or invade him into Africa through his barely guarded border. As to hold North America and get the same number of continental troops as pink and green combined won't be enough for me in order to win. What is quite unfortunate for me that the pink player combined his both biggest armies into A1 and fortified next to my strongest border. I could probably strengthen it more, but then the pink player could still crush that army into me. He is a low-ranked player and I don't want to risk it of him potentially ruining the balance of the game in the green player's favor. But what is fortunate is that the green player decided to invade the pink player into all of his continents, so that might have distracted him from me, and he might haven't invaded me into North America after all, but who knows. I didn't want to risk it, so I decided to move my army away from the pink player's biggest army. I think I might try to be passive right now and use the South American turtle strategy. I want for the pink and green players to fight each other, while I could be using the turtling strategy if possible. Though it might be hard to do it in case the green player stops invading pink. Australia is with only one border and the pink player couldn't really do anything to initiate the conflict with the green player further, so unless he would start crushing some troops into the green player, but that is very unlikely to happen. So I think it will really depend how much initiative the green player will show to attack pink. I don't want to be enemies with the pink player, so even though he invaded me I didn't retaliate and simply just recaptured North America, putting a counterattack army to the territory of Northwest Territory instead of the border on Greenland, so the pink player wouldn't feel pressured by me. But as you saw, the pink player still invaded me, so I see there's no way we will be friends with him, and in that case I think I will rather help the green player to attack him. So yeah, I'm invading him into both of his continents, Africa and Europe. If he doesn't let me hold continents, then I won't let him either, especially when I can so easily invade them. But I mean, in this situation it's tough for me to do something good. I think the green player would only invade pink if he has to crush one or few troops, and the green player would probably only crush some troops of the green player if green hadn't put all of them into one big army. So in that situation I think it would be the best for me to try sustaining the advantage for myself, avoid wasting many troops, and with the time try to expand more and more. As I think it's very unlikely for my opponents to start crushing some of their troops into each other, even if I weaken myself on one of them. But I could be wrong on that, who knows, but I doubt they would know much about mutually beneficial alliances in which you both crush some troops into your third opponent in the way which would be mutually beneficial for both of you. And I mean, this game is not even with the alliances, so there's no way for someone to say to attack another player. So that's a bit unfortunate. But on the other hand, since there are no alliances, nobody would take the alliance too seriously with another player, because simply there are none. Low-ranked players tend to take the alliances too seriously with another player and give away the game to that player, so in this game it doesn't supposed to happen. I say it doesn't, but it could, because the players could still feel good about each other and consider themselves to be in good relationships if they don't invade each other into their continents, or like then tend to focus on attacking the third opponent. Like in this case, the pink player didn't invade me into Africa even though he easily could with two of my borders being made of ones. But I don't think he would actually start crushing some troops into the green player with me, so I think I will try to dominate the whole game by myself. I could crush some troops into the green player to get to the pink player's troops level, but then I'm not guaranteed for him to understand my plan and start crushing some of the troops into him as well. So then I would just end up highly annoying the green player, and then the green player could start targeting me, crushing some of my troops while letting the pink player hold his continents, so I think that would have been a bit too much of a risk. The pink player fortified his biggest army to North America, so being afraid of the pink player crushing my Central American army which guarded South America, I decided to move that army away from the border. But I don't know, it was probably a very bad decision. I think the game would have been fine. In fact, I think instead of bailing out, I should have strengthened my Central American army. I think I would have perfectly protected both of my borders, as I doubt the pink player would have tried crushing them having fewer troops. But then again, to risk a bunch of your troops getting crushed for a two-troops continent doesn't seem to be as a great deal at all. I kinda don't like that the green player has started to be as passive as possible, and just using the Australian turtle strategy in which he just hoards his troops to one big army and doesn't attack any of opponents, letting them deal by themselves, just waiting till they over-destroy each other so he could win the game easily. And I mean, that's a legit strat. I was trying to do the same, so just without Australia. So yeah, I'm not sure what would be the best for us to do to conclude this game. I think the green player understands turtling strategies as well as me, and the pink player seems to be an unpredictable lower-ranked player who could possibly break the balance of the game either to my or the green player's favor, and because of it I think we both try to be very careful with that. But to be fair, the pink player hasn't done anything dumb yet. I mean, he hasn't ridiculously crushed a lot of troops of one player giving a big advantage to another one. So that's possible that I'm really underrating him as a player. Though on the other hand, I was just moving my troops out from his way whenever I saw that he could crush them, and then the green player was just putting all of his troops to one big army on Siam, so the pink player hasn't had an opportunity to crush a bigger amount of the green player's troops either. All in all, I'm still not sure how I feel about the pink player, on how decent he is. I'm still on the discovery stage. But I think at the end it should be him who ruins the balance of the game, giving the game to another player, but of course I could be wrong. I want for the green player to be more aggressive, so I fortified my troops to an isolated place like him. I'm willing to attack the pink player, but only if he attacks the pink player as well. I mean, it's a tough situation for me. At one side I have the pink player who could over-attack me and give the game to green if like I try to hold stuff and invade him pink whenever I can, with the green player staying passive, and at another side I have the green player, who by being relatively passive and with me then not attacking the pink player much either, the game could be given away for pink. And both of these options don't look good for me at all, as in both of them I end up as a loser, while one of my opponents as a winner. So what I need to achieve is that I and the green player would be attacking the pink player in the way which would be mutually beneficial for us, so in that case the pink player doesn't get to become overpowered, but at the same time he doesn't somehow break the balance of the game, since with us building our troops to single big armies, the pink player unlikely would be taking down a big amount of our troops. Players usually take down some smaller armies, but when you put your troops to one big army, all these your troops get untouched and are being safe, so unless if a player is suiciding on you. And I mean, there is possibility for a player just to crush some of his troops to your army, which would be completely fine, but to be honest I don't see it happening often in the public lobby games. Anyways, as you can see at this point the green player has become so much stronger than me. But at the same time he is quite stronger than the pink player as well, so far. And what I want to say that I was trying to attack the pink player and encourage the green player to attack the pink player much more also. But with the green player being quite more stronger, I should honestly stop. I should stop wasting troops on the pink player, as otherwise I could make the green player win. The green player is the strongest and could easily invade the pink player whenever he wants with no problems at all. But if he wants the pink player to catch up to him or even outgrow it, then it's up to him. Weaker player, which in this case me, isn't going to do the dirty work for the stronger player just to make that stronger player win. So if the green player wants for me to attack the pink player once again, then he has to get to my troops level by crushing some of his troops into the pink player firstly. I mean, I understand the idea behind the Australian turtle strategy, which could be very good playing with low-ranked players who would be dumb enough to over-destroy each other. But playing with another smart player who understands these motives, it isn't going to work. That player could just become passive and make you start taking some action by yourself. And with you being stronger, you're just forced to start attacking that player who tries to grab a lot of stuff, as otherwise that player is going to become overpowered and then just will win the game. The green player keeps blocking his army and with a little bit of attacking tries to get back to being very passive again. But with me being quite weaker than him, there's no way that I will start attacking the pink player firstly. As one way or another the game is being lost for me, so then I will rather just let the game flow, and in that case the player who is making some action will be favored, while the one who is being passive and does nothing will be disfavored. But alright, the green player has invaded the pink player, so now I think I will invade the pink player into South America and will stay here. I think it should be safer as well as for me and as well for the game, as both of the Americas could be held with only 3 borders to guard, so with that player becoming quite stronger sometimes it could be quite a risk. So it will be quite much safer if the pink player takes over Africa and Europe, having 4 borders to guard instead of 3. And then why I'm saying it will be more safe for me to have my troops in South America instead of at the bottom Africa is because the pink player was building his biggest army next to me, so with me moving to another place I hope the pink player relocates his troops as well, building them in a different way. With him now being in the middle, he might try to put his troops next to me and green equally, with the green player's army being near to him right now also. And I mean, it wasn't something bad for the green player to be very passive for a lot of time, as all in all he didn't let the pink player become overpowered. It would have been a problem if he did. Actually, it could be a good strategy to try at first to see if your opponent would be dumb to do the dirty work for you. And it either works out or not, it doesn't hurt to try. In this game a lot of times I was trying to be very passive and see if my opponents do the dirty work or end up destroying themselves also. Anyways, as you saw, I said a good game before the pink player taking over North America. I did that because I wanted to discourage the pink player from crushing my Central American army. What I saw is that the green player would end up being quite stronger, and that he could possibly try taking the attacker's advantage by crushing the smaller pink player armies, and then if he gets a good advantage, taking him out and then trapping me in South America and holding North America, Europe, Africa, Asia and Australia for a turn. But thank God the green player didn't try crushing some of the pink player's armies back then to see whether he would actually get an incredibly good attacker's advantage or not. So now I feel safe once again, and because the green player is quite stronger than me, I'm just continuing turtling and not attacking the pink player. Actually, since the green player is the strongest, I and the pink player should team up and start crushing some troops into him, but since I know that the pink player isn't going to do that, I mean that would be very unlikely, I just let the green player as the strongest player crush the pink player, so the pink player wouldn't take over the lead. But then of course when the green player finally gets to my troops level, I will be willing to start attacking the pink player as well. Because as of now I cannot really do that to not give the advantage for the green player. I could invade the pink player, but what's the purpose? The advantage of the green player would be increased once again, and he is still the strongest player, so I think it's just the best to wait. At this point it's really all about the waiting. I cannot really do much. Well, at least I cannot think of something good. Obviously I wouldn't be able to hold both of the Americas. And actually I couldn't even afford to capture North America yet, so unless the pink player would move out his Greenland's army. The green player is the strongest player, so if I as the weaker player waste troops on another weaker player, then the green player should be extremely favored. And oh wow, the pink player has even crushed the green player's smaller army, which is actually quite big, by himself. So I think he is really starting to get annoyed with green. I believe most of the time the pink player was annoyed with me, paying more attention to me than green, but now I think the situation has changed and the pink player is quite more dissatisfied with the green player. That is very actually good for me. I think these constant attacks made the pink player annoyed. The green player could have crushed a lot of troops of the pink player immediately, but he was doing everything little by little and more and more. And what is extremely good is that the green player has split his army into two different ones, as now there's possibility for the pink player to crush one of them and in doing so, give away the whole game to me. So let's just patiently wait, I guess. My army is in a position and ready to attack whenever it gets the opportunity at a decent chance of winning. I'm not blocking it once again. I wouldn't like to miss that potential opportunity, and it seems my opponents are fighting each other anyways, don't matter whether my army is unleashed or not. And oh wow, the pink player is done with the game and decided just to suicide on the green player. Well, I mean the game was getting dragged out and becoming very boring anyways. This game is unranked, so nobody is going to either get or lose the ranking points anyways, but since the pink player suicided, I will give the second place for the green player. If possible, I will rather give a better place for a player who was playing to win. And I mean the pink player was probably trying his best to win also, so the game just got very boring, or maybe he got very emotional on green, who knows, but at the end who cares. Let's check out what were the ranks of my opponents. Alright, the yellow, pink and orange players were beginners, while the blue and green players were intermediates. It was more or less expected, so maybe and less about the green player. I thought he would either be expert or master. By the way, don't be an Australian turtle merch has just been dropped. Various of different products, from t-shirts and hoodies to phone cases and mugs. Get them at riskforeverstore.com.